Good morning to everyone. We are the BSIT 2-2 and we are going to present the Comsci 1200 database management system. In that case, we are going to report the case study University Employee Management System. My members are Calacala Darren, Fang Ronnie, Martinez Earl Justine, Miranda Leah, Ostan Kein Henrick, and Anjelo. First, we are going to tackle the chain notation where Calacala Darren is going to present.
So here's our ER diagram in chain notation. So each have entities which is person, other info, civil service, education, training program, work, volunteer work, and family. And each entities have attributes. So I'll explain all the attributes and entity each. So first is the persons, which had attributes. The key attributes: SSN, citizenship attributes, birthday, GSIS number, and a composite attribute name, which have atomic attribute, first name, middle name, and surname, and a civil status, place of birth, and a composite attribute which has an atomic attribute, city, street, barangay, zip code. And next entities is other info, which has a strong relationship and a cardinality 1 to many, and which have a multi-valued attributes, hobbies, skills, membership in org, and a key attribute reference. Next is the civil service entity, which a relationship has done and a cardinality 1 to many, with an attributes of exam date, exam place, license number, career service, and date release. Next is the education entity, which has a relationship has background on and a cardinality 1 to many, with an attributes vocabulary voc course, secondary school name, elementary school name, a composite attribute college university name, which have a multi-valued attribute course and a year graduate, and a composite also have a composite graduate studies attribute, which has a composite attribute materials and PhD. Next is the training program entities. Has a relationship, has a strong relationship has been on and cardinality 1 to many, and an attribute, key attribute title, an attribute conducted by, attribute number of hours, start date, and end date. Next entity is work, which has experience on relationship and a cardinality 1 to many, and an attribute, start date, title, end date, status of appointment, is step increment, government service, salary, workplace, and year of experience. Next entity is volunteer work, which has strong relationship, has volunteered, and cardinality 1 to many, with attributes of org name, number of hours, position, start date, and end date. Last entities is family, which has a relationship related to and derived attribute children, and an attribute spouse, surname, father name, and a composite attribute mother name, and a atomic attribute maiden name. That's all. Thank you.
Next is about the description of the ERD components. As we can see in the table 1, it shows the description of the entities. And in this table, we can see that there is a relation name and the description. Also, we input the aliases and the occurrence. In the table 2, here we input the relation name, description, the cardinality where you can see if it is 1:many or 1:1, and the occurrence. In the table 3, we can see here all of the description of the database we made and all of the relationship of the entities where we input the attribute names, description, the data type and length, and other constraints. In the data type and length, here we can see that if the data is a variable, character, or integer, decimal, date, and many more. In the other constraint, we can see if the data is primary key or foreign key, and many more. Next is about the cross-foot notation where Kein, Henrick, Ostan is going to report.
So here, we have the ERD in cross-foot notation. We have the entity, person, and entity, child, spouse, training programs, parents, civil services, other information, address, work experience, voluntary work, level, education. It's just like the other one that Darren Calacala reported, but this one is now the cross-foot notation version of it. So first, we have the person and its attribute, CSID, number, name, and the name has also an attribute. It also have an attribute, first name, middle name, last name, name extension, date of birth, with its attribute also, month, day, year, and place, citizenship, EIN, sex, cell phone number, email, civil status, weight, height, blood type, SSS number, GSIS ID number, agency employee number, Pag-ibig ID number, PhilHealth ID number. So let's start with the relationship of this person to his spouse or her spouse. The person can have the person is only one, can have one to many spouse, and its spouse is also have attribute name with its multi-valued attribute, first name, middle name, surname, employee, boss name, employer, business name, occupation, business address, telephone number. So that's the attribute of spouse. The person can also have the person one can have zero or none to many child. Name, the child has also attribute name, just like the person with its multi-valued attribute name, first name, middle name, surname. The person. So here we can also see that the relationship of person and education. The person studied at the person studied the person studied zero or many education types. School name, the education also have an attribute school name, year graduated, degree course, attendance dates, highest earned scholarship, academic honors. Education can also have many levels, just like elementary, secondary, college, vocational, trade, graduated studies. Okay. So the entity person and its relationship to training programs. The person trained many, title, hours, date, date of attendance, sponsor. The entity person also has the relationship with its one and only parents, entity parents. These entity parents also have attribute of father. The father also have the attribute father also have an attribute first name, middle name, surname. Just like the father, the mother also have attributes. The attribute mother also have an attribute surname, first name, middle name, maiden's name. So the entity person also takes civil services, and the civil services have an attribute place, exam date, rating, license number, date of release, career, service. Person also have a relationship to voluntary work, which the person volunteered on voluntary work. Voluntary work, the entity voluntary work also have attributes, position, are, organization name, address, volunteer work dates. So person also have other informations. These other informations is also an entity with attribute, membership, skills, hobbies, recognition. The entity person also have an address. It could be the address is also can also be an entity, and this address have two attributes, and the first one is permanent. The permanent have a multi-valued attributes with attribute, zip code, telephone number. Also, the second one is residential, zip code, and telephone number. The entity person can have work experience with zero or none work experience. The work experience have the attribute of the company name, status, position or title, work dates, salary grade, monthly salary, government service with oh, that's all. Sorry. That's all, and thank you.
In data dictionary, Earl will going to report.
In the data dictionary, there's the relationship name that will represent the relationship in each entity, and in the attribute name, it could be the name, sex, email, address, or civil status. In the description, it adds a description in each attribute of entity. In data type and length, the length of the variable or character is in other constraint, it could be a null or not null.
Next is SQL statement, and Ronnie Fang is going to report it.
In SQL statement, we use MySQL Workbench in creating our database. Then create tables, namely civil service, education, family, other info, person, training program, volunteer work, and work. Then we insert data using insert into. Yun lang. Yun na po.
Next is the questionnaire. Number 1, list all the rules you use to transform your ERD or EERD to a relational diagram. And Leah will going to answer.
Number 1, list all the rules you use to transform your ERD or EERD to relation diagram. As a group, we use mapping of regular entity types with domain constraints and key constraints.
Next is number 2. How many 1:1, 1:many, many to none is your ER hub? And it will going to answer by Kein, Henrick, Ostan.
Okay, number 2. How many 1:1, 1:many, many is to none does our ER have? We have 2 1:1, 15 1:many, and 0 2 many is to none.
Number 3. Who is your team leader in your group? As a team leader, how you assign the task of each member of your group and how you decide in design your group project database design. So I am the group leader and I distribute the task that in our group where every member of my group I assign them where they all know what are they doing. And kasi mahirap mag-assign ng group kung alam mong hindi nila alam kung anong gagawin. Kaya inassign ko sila kung saan sila mas komportable at kung nahihirapan sila, hindi ko sila pinag-individual, kumbaga pinag-baitus ko sila para mas mabilis din namin magawa at mas magkaroon ng collaboration sa aming group. Next is number 4. Identify an attributes in the ER diagram that might represent a composite attributes and explain why or how it might represent a composite attribute. And it will going to answer by Darren Calacala.
So ano nga ba ang composite attribute? So ang composite attribute is an attribute where the values of that attribute can be further subdivided into meaningful subparts. So here's our examples na composite attribute. So first is name. Name can be subdivided to any different subparts, which is the first name, middle name, and the surname. Next one is the address that can also subdivided to many subparts like city, streets, barangay, and zip code. And another example composite attributes is graduate studies, which has 2 subparts, which is materials and PhD. And the last one is the college name and can be divided to courses, which courses is multi-valued attributes na pwede siyang mag-subparts with subdivided to any subparts like every other courses. And that's one thing.
Next is number 5. Do you think a recursive relationship is applicable in your ERD? Why or why not? And it will going to answered by Earl, Justine, Martinez.
Yes, it is applicable in our ERD because there are 2 entities that have an instance in a one relationship.
Next is number 6. As a group member of a database design team, what are the specific part of the database design processes in your team did you learn? All of us will going to answer it. But first, Darren Calacala.
So as a group member of this project, I've learned what I've learned for this project is using symbols that which we can use in the chain notation diagram. So which is mas madaling ma-identify which is kung anong data type at mga entities and attributes because of that symbol. So that's for me.
Next is Ronnie Fang.
In this project, I learned how to use my SQL workbench more efficiently and how to determine and identify the entities in creating chain notation.
Next is Kein, Henrick, Ostan.
So, as a group member of this database design team, the one that I've learned is obviously the one that I've reported, the ARB in cross-foot notation. For me, it is the easiest because rather than using symbols, all I have to do in this type of ERD is to list only one box, and that is the column list of attributes of an entity. And it is easy for me to distinguish if its relation is 1:1, 1:many, or many is to none. That's all.
Next is Leah and Miranda.
As a group member, I learned how to identify entities, attributes, multi-valued, and relation in chain notation and cross-foot.
Next is Earl Justine Martinez.
As a part of the design team, I have learned how to identify kung ano ang mga gagamitin na, kung ano ang ilalagay na data type o kaya gagamitin na symbols para mabuo ang ERD. Yung mga SQL code din ay medyo na-enhance ko ang skills ko din.
Next is so ang natutunan ko dito is kung paano i-convert from chain notation to cross-foot. Tsaka natutunan ko rin na yung kailangan mo munang hanapin yung mga value ng bawat isa para malaman mo kung kailangan i-primary or i-foreign key yung bawat data type. So that's all for our reporting. Once again, we are the BSIT 2-2. Thank you for watching.